Welcome to Wild Spirits Outdoors, the place for real hunting talk, tactics, and a few laughs. Now let's dive in with your host, Brad Dijon.
Hey guys and gals, welcome to Wild Spirits Outdoors. If you're listening on the day of the drop, today is Tuesday, January 27th, 2026. This is, I believe, episode number 22. And as you can see, I am not in the studio. I'm sitting in my home office. I just got done with a great conversation doing a remote recording with a gentleman named Clint Catchot of Droppin Hammers Outdoors. Clint resides in the great state of New York, and he spends a lot of his time chasing whitetails in upstate New York, among other places. And you guys will hear all about that as we get into our conversation. This is a pretty long one. It's a couple hours long. We could have gone longer, but we had to shut it down. But we'll definitely have him on again. It was a great conversation, great time. I hope you guys enjoy. A couple quick things before I jump off and get the recording up here and running so you guys can listen to the conversation. If you live pretty much anywhere in the eastern half of the U.S., it is cold, 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 and a lot of snow. So if you're into winter sports, winter recreation, snowmobiling, ice fishing, we got a winter for it so far, and I don't think it's going to let up. Looking at the extended forecast, we've got more of this coming. So I'm excited for it. I'm going to get out and do some more ice fishing. I went out this weekend, froze my butt off. The only thing I caught was frostbite, I think, but I still had a good time. So I'm going to try to get back after it again. If you guys want to learn more about Clint, learn more about Droppin Hammers Outdoors, check the link in the podcast description for his YouTube channel, as well as a link to his Facebook page. I'm not going to take much time on this intro. I want to get you guys into the episode. I hope you have a good time. I hope you enjoy listening. This is Wild Spirits Outdoors. Take care. Hey, Clint, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Excellent, excellent. So everybody, welcome to Wild Spirits Outdoors. Pleasure to have you guys join us. This is my first attempt at a remote podcast, so bear with us. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun, and I'm excited to introduce my guest. So Clint, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what your YouTube channel is and what you're doing, and then we'll just kind of dig into the nuts and bolts of it.
So my first name's Clint, last name's Catchot. I was born in Virginia, grew up in New York, hunted a couple different states right around here, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Tennessee. But my YouTube channel is Droppin Hammers Outdoors, just getting that going. It's about a year old. I don't have a lot of big buck footage on there yet. As you can see, I shoot plenty of them, but getting them on film is a whole nother ball game. So working on that part, but it is coming along and it's been fun.
Awesome, awesome. Well, for folks that are listening, Clint had reached out to me through Messenger. He had seen some of the stuff I'd put on social media. We got to talking, and I was like, man, this guy seems like a really down to earth, cool guy to talk to. I personally have always been really into the thought of going and hunting like the upstate New York, New England area. It just always looked like an immense challenge to me. And I thought, what better way to kind of dive into what that is than to talk to somebody who lives and breathes it during whitetail season. So, Clint, again, I do appreciate you jumping on. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into hunting in general once you got to New York, how you got to New York, and just kind of build us into where that started at for you.
So I've been in New York since about the time I was 3. And to make a long story short, I did a little bit of hunting with family members. And it was more like just follow and kind of listen and learn type thing. And I didn't really learn too much until I started hunting on my own at 17. And then I was gun hunting at 17. And then I picked up a bow for the first time at 19. And it was off to the races, man. It was over with.
Right on, right on. So would you say bow hunting trips your trigger a little bit more than gun hunting does?
Oh yeah, I mean the close quarters game is just it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm the same way. I love all aspects of whitetail hunting, but you want to get me going. You want to get me really fired up. Put a bow in my hand and turn me loose. So, What is it about New York that you find unique or more challenging than in other places you hunt? I know you've hunted several other states, but what is it about New York that seems to take it to a different level for you?
So I would say the buck to doe ratio, the competition in general, the buck numbers, it just creates a recipe for hard hunt, and not having a lot of big bucks to chase makes it more challenging because you don't have um five big bucks, five hit listers to target. You may have one or two in the whole county.
Sure,
So
sure.
it's tough.
I'm cutting out just a
Or
little
maybe
bit.
not a whole county, but in a town like area, you get one.
Okay. You cut out there just a little bit, Clint. Can you repeat, go back to where you said, I heard you say 5 bucks, and then you might have, and then I kind of lost you there.
So what makes it kind of difficult is you may only have one big buck in a town to hunt, and it's not like other states where you can have a bunch of big bucks to chase. You kind of get what you get, and if you have a big one that's maybe 130 inches or bigger, you're doing good. So
Sure, sure. Now, what kind of terrain are you focused on in New York? Are you hunting different types of terrain, or is it all hill country? Is it a mix? What are you looking at?
hill country is a freaking pain, man. That's for darn sure. Going up and down that stuff, but have some flat land. I try to, if I can get permission on it, I'm gonna hunt it, and that puts me into flat land. We got some good land with crops around here, and then we got some hilly stuff too, and swamp areas, stuff like that. But like I said, if there's deer on it and I can get permission on it, I'm gonna hunt it. But we kind of got a smorgasbord of different terrains right around this area, so.
Right on. When you're going out and looking at properties, or you're looking for deer, and then you're trying to determine how to get access to certain properties, do you find that certain terrain types lend themselves better to finding more mature or age class bucks that you're targeting, or is it just a mixed bag?
It's a mixed bag, but I would say that me personally, I feel like flatland is easier to hunt.
Oh, for sure.
Um, it's easier to scout. It's easier to pinpoint the bucks.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Um, I've hunted a lot of hill country in like Ohio, for example, and what I found is here in Michigan where I hunt, I've got some hilly country here and there, but for the most part, the majority of what I hunt here in Michigan is relatively flat. A little bit of terrain, but nothing like what I see like in southern Ohio, for example. One thing I've found that is much different with significant hill country versus, let's call it, rolling terrain that I'm familiar with is in rolling terrain, it's much easier for me to pinpoint where bucks are likely going to bed. And then you get into hill country, and I find that they can literally bed just about anywhere, and they can move beds a lot, and it's all just going to base upon what the wind and thermals are doing. They might move 2 ridges over, or they might move to a different point on the same ridge system. So pinning down bedding for me in hill country is definitely more challenging, and getting on them and kind of being able to work through a little bit of what I think their route, I guess you could say, is in hill country. So, um, what's the hunting pressure like? I guess before we dive too deep, and I don't want you to give away like your secret sauce as far as where you're hunting, but generally, what areas in upstate New York are you hunting?
I'm in like the Cat County, Chautauqua County area. Um, and it does receive a fair amount of pressure. You, you, it's getting harder to find properties to hunt. But you got a lot of people leasing up land. You got a lot of people just own land and they don't want to let other people hunt, which is understandable, but makes it a little difficult. But there's definitely competition.
Sure, sure. Uh, do you find a lot of out of state pressure, or is it for the most part localized pressure?
Um, no, I don't see a ton of out of staters. I mean, I tell you, they'd probably come out here and run home after day one or day two. I wouldn't
Screw
blame
this.
them. Uh, the hunting public, they came out here for to do a show on YouTube. Most people know who they are.
Yeah.
And they were out here for, it was either 7 days or 10 days. Zach was and one of the other guys. And they said that they didn't even see a buck with a rack. They didn't even see a spike in the 7 days or 10 days. I can't remember which it was. They did end up killing one because, man, those guys just don't quit. They don't give up. But that's how hard it is. And that gives you a really good perspective of how hard New York can be.
For sure. Was it Zach that came out there and did that hunt?
Yeah, the longer haired Zach there. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if there's two Zachs on there.
Yeah. The kind of the OG Zach is what I think of him as. Yeah. I tell you what, man, if there's a deer that needs to be killed somewhere, put him on it because I got so much respect for not only his style of hunting, but his tenacity. I mean, he's just an uber aggressive and he's very, very smart. I wish, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think as far as just hunting smarts and overall woodsmanship, I don't know exactly how old Zach is. I got to imagine he's 15 plus years younger than me. He's probably in his maybe early 30s, somewhere around there. He's going to be one of those guys that when he hangs it up, and he's probably not going to hang it up until he physically can't do it anymore. But he's going to be one of those guys that will have um, enough knowledge to write, books on not only the art of the chase of whitetails, but just overall woodsmanship. So to hear you say he came into New York and it took him 7 or 10 days just to get on a rack deer, really speaks to just how difficult that hunting can be. So
Yeah, and to acknowledge him, he kind of took, and I may be wrong, but from what I understood in the videos I watched, he kind of took the hunting public down a different road. They were doing a lot of hang and bangs with stands when they first started, and they got into the what do you call them things? Your yeah, your saddles. They got into a lot of those. Well, Zach was kind of getting tired of sitting in trees like that, and before you know it, he was taking those guys on the ground. And after they had some success with it, I mean, you've seen some of the videos they produced. Like, and I will say, a couple of bucks I've killed were on the ground, and it really is a different experience, man, when you're on the ground and it's unfolding.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
I've listened to a lot of I've watched a lot of hunting public stuff, and I've listened to a lot of Zach just talking about things in general. And um, yeah, he definitely, and he says he wishes he had the ability to be more patient to sit in a tree. But I mean, when you're having the kind of success he's having and the adrenaline you get out of that, why sit in a tree and wait it out when you can just go get them? So he's definitely subscribed to that whitetail adrenaline style where it's get on the ground and just get after him. So um, when I think about that and I think of New York hunting, particularly public land, I don't know what kind of public land is available up there. Is there a lot of public land, or is it a fairly small amount?
right in the area, I'm not positive about the entire state, but right in the area I'm in, there seems to be a decent amount around us, and again, it falls right into quite a bit of different terrain you can get mixed up in New York, and that's kind of cool about it. But there does seem to be some, and it's fairly accessible. So
Okay. Um, on the private access that you're acquiring permission to, is that a mixed bag of properties? Is it large tracts of properties? Is it small tracts? Where do you find your success, and can it be anything from a small acreage opportunity to a 300 plus acre farm? Like, what are you finding success on?
so I do generally try to get on some bigger properties. I start with that, and it's a battle for sure. Um, you need a little bit of luck, but I don't shy away from 20-acre properties and all the way down to even smaller. I mean, I've had some crazy encounters on properties that were like 3 to 5 acres, and they're just they're very sensitive and just need a different kind of style of hunting, like a riskier all-in style, and you just got to be really sure of what you're doing. But
Sure.
if I think there's deer on it, I'll get permission on it, and it could be anywhere from 3 acres to 3,000. So, I
Fair
mean,
enough.
that's a little far fetched, but if I get on something 200, that I'd be a little shocked. That's only happened once.
Sure.
So most of them are like 50 acres or less.
Okay. So for the folks listening that just, maybe they don't live in New York, maybe they're Michiganders like me, or they live in Indiana or Mississippi, wherever it is. Um, what's your success rate when you're trying to get permission? Say for every 10 asks, how many yeses do you think you get? And when you get those yeses, what is it that you're doing, or how are you going about asking that you think helps find that success?
It's usually like 9 no's to a yes. And the one thing that I found is like you have to be very personable, and you have to put a good look on your face, be, someone that is approachable. One thing that I do is I either knock on the door or I ring the doorbell. I always take like 3 steps back, 4 steps back from the door. So I'm not right in their face. And then when they answer the door, I introduce myself, and I usually try to tell them a little bit about myself to make them feel like in some sort of way they know me. And sometimes I'll even crack a joke or try to get them to smile or laugh before I even ask them, and then just smoothly transition into, well, I was kind of wondering if I might be able to hunt your property. And you you get a lot of no's, but every so often it pays off.
No, that's a good way to approach it. That's very similar to how I go about approaching private access askings. I've always found if you show up there dressed in camouflage with camo paint on your face, it's not a good look. It immediately puts them kind of, first of all, they're like, what the hell's this camouflage psycho doing on my front porch, right? And then and I think in their mind, they're already thinking that you think it's a yes because of how you look, and you're just going to knock. They're going to say yes, and you're just going to go wander out back. So I definitely agree with you. Show up looking personable, be friendly, and yeah, when you knock on that door, it's always good to take a few steps back. You ever had anything wild, like just somebody straight up, make you
Yeah.
rethink your life
Well,
choices?
I mean, one time I was knocking on the door, and the guy kind of did the head cracked the door open, stuck his head out, and his dog is in the back just barking like hell and beating on the door, trying to get out the door. And I'm just standing there like waiting. If that thing cracks another inch, I'm running to the truck, man.
Sure.
I'm out of here.
For sure.
And then the guy wasn't all that personable either. I asked him if I could hunt there, and he goes, "Oh hell, I'll let the dog out before that."
Oh,
And
damn.
well, I'm like, this conversation is over.
We're done. We're done.
But what was the other one that stood out quite a bit? I was just thinking about it. I'll have to I'll have to see if I can remember it. I had it right on the top of my head there and ended up forgetting it.
It happens. It happens to us. Um, let's talk while you're maybe it comes back, maybe it doesn't. I'm sure we'll get into some other stuff too. But what's the tag structure like in the state of New York as far as buck tags, antlerless tags, so on and so forth?
So they give you your regular season buck tag for gun season and shotgun. Then they give you an either sex tag for bow and muzzleloader. And then you get an antlerless tag. You can apply for 2 DMP tags, and then you can apply for a second round of DMP tags. And then you can also have 2 signed over to you. So altogether, pretty much you can get up to 7 doe tags, and then you can harvest 2 bucks throughout 2 different parts of the season in New York.
Okay. DMP, is that deer management something? What does that stand for?
Deer management permit, I
Ah,
believe.
okay. Okay. And what are your season lengths? When does archery season open in New York?
So the archery starts at like October 1, and that runs usually to November 10th to 15th, somewhere in there, or even 17th. The gun season pulls up in there somewhere. And then you run gun season to muzzleloader, which the gun season goes till just the like the first week of December. Or no, I think the regular gun season goes till somewhere right there, and then you get a week of with muzzleloader, and then eventually now we have a holiday hunt too, which is like you have a week delay and then another week.
Gotcha.
So
Pretty long season.
pretty
Very
long.
very comparable to Michigan. I think Michigan, our archery season starts October 1st, but in September we have an early antlerless any weapon season. We have a youth hunt season, and then we have a veterans, like a weekend long veterans special hunt as well. So really, from about the middle of September, basically through January, there's some sort of deer hunting season going on in Michigan, which is it's a lot of hunting pressure. It puts a lot of pressure on the deer. Is New York is it a straight wall cartridge state for firearm?
No, so you can use neck downs here. You can use just about any cartridge.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Michigan's broken into three zones. So zone 1 and 2 is you can use any cartridge. Zone 3 is a straight wall cartridge. Um, there's been some talk about them changing that. To be honest with you, with the straight wall cartridges that we have today, and with the modern muzzle loaders, that that the whole thought process behind why they did that is kind of moot at this point. I mean, guys can take 250 plus yard shots with muzzle loaders, so it's not really changing much. But is there anything in
Yeah.
particular with the regulations themselves in the state of New York that you think impact not only the herd ratio, because you had said that uh, the buck to doe ratio is significantly out of whack with a lot more does per buck. Do you think that's regulation driven? Do you think it's culturally driven? Um, this might make a lot of my Michigan listeners mad to hear, but Michigan has a culture of, um, and it's not everybody, and I don't want people to think I'm just painting everybody in Michigan this way, but there is a long culture in Michigan of shooting does for a lot of years was kind of, I don't want to say it was looked down upon, but it was like people would rather shoot a 4 point than shoot a doe, and that culture has changed a little bit, but there is still that stigma, I guess, around it. Or people want to wait to shoot that big buck. They don't want to screw their hunting property up, so they wait to shoot that big buck. They wait to shoot their does till after they shoot that big buck, and what ends up happening is either they run out of season or they shoot the big buck in the middle of November. It gets cold out, and then they end up not going back out and chasing does. Is it similar to that in New York?
Yeah, the buck to doe ratio is so out of whack. I mean, you can see 40, 50 deer in a field and not even have one that has a rack. And as far as the regulations goes, I do think that has something to do with how long the seasons are. Um, Especially the gun season, it's long. But it is a cultural thing too, because you do have plenty of people that don't want to shoot does, and you also have the guys that will, and then you have guys who are, rack hunters or trophy hunters. Me in particular, I'm more of like a trophy hunter, but also a meat hunter. I do a little bit of both. I like to fill the freezer and then chase the big bucks. But what kind of messes with people here is that you're already set up for failure, because with low buck numbers and maybe having one buck like this in a town and everybody knows about it and the thing is alive because it's smart, then it people they put their what they're willing to shoot lowers quite a bit. And so a lot of people around here, when they shoot a 100-inch deer, man, they're proud as all hell with it, and they should be. If they're happy with it, they should show it off like that. But that is part of the reason why we are where we are, and it's not necessarily even the hunter's fault. It's just the where we're at with everything. Buck to doe ratio is a super low number of mature bucks, and people kind of have the feeling that if they don't crack that 2-year-old when it walks by, they're eating a tag, and I believe they think that from experience.
Sure. What's your soil type like?
So
Go ahead.
we have we have more of like a browner type of soil, nothing like clay like or anything like that, but it does, especially right around here, it does seem to grow crops pretty well. A lot of corn, a lot of soybeans and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, Michigan's kind of a mixed bag. The farther north you go, the poorer the soil quality is. Where I live is kind of right on that. I'm right on that edge where my property is. You go just a little bit north of me, the soil quality decreases significantly, and then the farther south you go, you start getting into really good quality soil, and you can really see that also in the bucks just overall, and the overall deer numbers as well. The farther south in Michigan you go, uh, just the overall higher deer numbers. And it's not to say you can't shoot really nice bucks anywhere in the state, but there's definitely a higher prevalence of them in the southern regions. When
Yeah,
you
there's a couple counties in New York that, man, I'll tell you what, they hammer big ones.
Yeah,
And there's like one or two in particular, and I'll tell you, I think that really goes right toward what I was just talking about with people being pickier. And I know it has to be, because that's the only way you get that. And that's why, I preach a little bit about passing those 2-year-olds, is because people don't realize that if every 2-year-old in a town gets passed, next year every single one of them are three.
sure.
You know, and so now you just doubled the amount of bucks that you're going to have at 3 years old next year. And people have a tendency to think that if they pass that 2-year-old, it's going to get killed. And I get it, I do. But from what I've seen, bucks in general don't have a real big core area, especially, in the rut. And then once late season comes around, they're usually stuck on a food source. And what I'm trying to say with that is the likelihood of you passing that deer and it not getting killed, it only takes a neighbor to be on the same page as you, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially with the high doe numbers, those bucks don't have to travel long distances to breed. They can stay in a relatively small area, and you know they can get as much doe booty as they want without having to travel very far to do so. Um, I was going to ask you. I was going to also mention, excuse me, when you said passing those 2-year-olds, um, I completely understand why people don't, just like you had just said. Um, what I have noticed though, when you said all those 2-year-olds, if you pass them, they will become 3-year-olds. That's 100% correct. And to me, in my opinion, and this could just be me making it up, but I think that 3.5-year-old age class for a buck is a pivotal year for them. They have that year from 2.5 to 3.5, they learn so much about the predator versus prey and how to live that a switch is flipped in them. And from 3.5 until about 6.5 is probably when they're going to be their hardest to kill. And it's only going to get harder and harder from 3.5 to 4.5, 4.5 to 5.5, 5.5 to 6.5. Um, that's a pivotal age for whitetails. And if you can get a good handful of them to reach that age, uh, that just incentivizes the opportunity for one of those bucks to survive and make it to that 4.5-year-old. Which here where I'm at, to see a 4.5-year-old buck is like seeing a 170 in Iowa. Like they are there, but it's not like they're behind every single tree, right? So it's hard to find a 4.5-year-old deer here where I'm hunting. Is it similar, obviously, where you're at?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I know people that have left the state and gone to other states, and are like, I'll never hunt New York again, because, the the amount of bucks that are in some of these other states, the buck to doe ratios, the genetics and stuff, and genetics plays a big part of it too. I mean, my cousin shot 2 bucks this year. He's, not too far from me, probably 25 minutes away. Um, and both those bucks, I don't even know if they would have made 120, but he knows for a fact that both of them were 4 years old.
Sure.
So, and that's hillier country. And so that has a lot to do with some of the misunderstanding that people have with different states and thinking that, Iowa is known for big bucks, so the whole entire state is going to have big bucks and, the genetics and all that stuff. And that's not true. And New York is just like that. There's pockets of good genetics here and there, but um no matter where you go, when you go to hilly terrain, you're more likely to get into a smaller rack size, sometimes bigger body, and it's all on genetics and what they're eating, what they have available for food. So,
Yeah. What is outside of your standard acorns and ag? Is there anything in particular that people should look for when they're chasing deer around in New York as far as browse goes? Is there anything that you see when you're out in the woods and you're like, oh, I got to keep an eye out for this because the deer tend to browse very, very heavily on this particular forb or whatever it is?
so in the early season, creek bottoms and wherever you can get in lower terrain with watery areas, even swamps and stuff, there's a plant called jewelweed, and it it looks kind of like a straw, and it just has these little orange flowers coming off of it. And actually, if you push them, they pop. But they love that plant. If you look up jewelweed, and you'll notice when you go through the woods and you're walking through the woods and you find these pockets in these low areas with water. Usually, if you find some jewelweed, it's going to be tore up from the floor up. Um, and that is something to key in on. And one thing that I've noticed in general, deer will eat anything. They will eat anything. And do they kind of seek out the easier food source? Yeah. And I honestly don't think that how something tastes is necessarily a huge factor to them. I think that they're more or less, especially those bigger bucks. I mean, they're just so disciplined. They're going to do whatever is safest for them. But I mean, they hit the beans when the beans are good here, and then when the corn's up, they'll stomp the corn pretty good too. But when I'm hunting and stuff, I see them eating leaves,
Yeah.
like eating leaves and chewing on branches, and you know they'll eat anything.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep. It's always I love to plant my food plots on my property. I love to just go out and glass bean fields, but that's that's only like 20% of their diet. I mean, 80% of their diet is made up of, like you said, they're eating leaves, forbs, and woody browse. So you always see bucks eating leaves, and you're like, man, I got a food plot right over here. It's got turnips, it's got chicory, it's got everything you want, but you're in the woods eating leaves, man. I'm spending all this time and money in your back here eating on some maple leaves. So when you're
Yeah, that,
when you're chasing
go ahead.
around the New York area that you're in, how much time are you spending scouting, let's say preseason scouting versus during season scouting? Um, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, are you out driving back roads during, August and September, glassing fields, trying to find a target deer, and then putting your game plan together how to access via permission and put a game plan together on how to hunt that buck? Or are you going into places that you just know historically year over year tend to produce mature deer and modifying your hunt every year based upon that?
Yeah, so I would say I'm more on the historical side of things. I don't do too much of the glassing out in fields, and I don't do too much of the back road scouting and stuff. If I'm driving anywhere and I just happen to see one, a big buck, I'll try to go get permission on it. And then I'll go through the process of trying to figure out how I'm going to kill the thing based off of what I've seen. But the historical data is a big driver for me, really big driver.
Makes sense. Um, do you tend to find that when, say, pick one of those bucks behind you there, when you took that buck out of the gene pool, um, how long did it take before you noticed maybe the next generation or another buck his age class moving into that similar territory or just straight up taking over that area?
So what I noticed personally is when I whack one of these jokers, um, I'm going to end up with a 2-year-old taking over that property. And what I've come to see is when I pass him, I have certain properties where if they have what they need, they're not going to leave. And this goes, back to what we were just talking about. Like you can hold a buck on 5 acres and keep him alive. Two is that vital year where if they make it from two, it's because they figured something out.
Yep.
And if they figure it out and they hit three, the likelihood of that buck making it to maturity just skyrocketed. Because they're smart enough to make it to three, then they're you know a lot smarter than the rest of them. Because a 2-year-old walking around here, it's a death sentence for him.
Sure.
But what I'm getting at is once even on a small piece like 5 acres or 8 acres, which I've killed plenty of bucks on small properties like that. Once you get a 2-year-old down there, if you pass him and you hold him, keep an eye on him, you can end up with something good there. But then again, we bounce back to the genetics thing because, I have one property that has a big mature 7-pointer on it right now, and that it's looking like that's all he's ever going to be. So that's the hard part, especially if he's a bully.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you listened to it, but I think it was 4 or 5 podcasts episodes ago. I was talking about this buck that I've got on my property, and I call him Bully Buck. I've seen him. I know this deer is at least 5.5 years old because I've got that much data with him. He was a super thin horned, super wide 4-point the first year I saw him, and I thought he was a 2.5-year-old deer. The following year, he blew up in mass. He got a lot of mass on him as a 3.5-year-old, and his splits got bigger, but he was still a 4-point. The next year, he grew a little dinky point, and then I think it was the following year. No, it was that year that he grew that little dinky point. I was really, really tempted to take that buck, but when I saw that he grew that little point, I was like, man, if he gets one more year and maybe something breaks towards the rack, he could be he's never going to be anything great, but he could be a really solid 8-point. And then the next year, this year, what did he do? He went right back to a 4-point, and he's probably 18 to 20 inches wide, super heavy. I mean, he's got a 130-inch, 135-inch frame. He just doesn't have any points to go with it. I want to kill that deer so bad. I really, really do, because he is so aggressive. He runs other bucks off. Like I said in that podcast, October 1st, if he walks out and there's another buck around, he'll posture up. He'll lay his ears back. He'll get super aggressive. If it's December 30th, he'll do the same thing. So it's just crazy to watch every other buck's demeanor change when he walks in. And he hasn't got anything for a rack, but he's a buck that honestly, if I get a chance, I haven't seen him on camera. I run cameras on my private property. I haven't seen him on camera since I think the beginning of January. He could have shed. I have a pretty high confidence he's still probably alive, but he's just one of them bucks that he's never going to turn into anything. But I would be super, super stoked to kill that deer, just because of his age, his body size, and just honestly, I just want him the hell out of there because he's running off. He's running off better genetic bucks, just because of his demeanor. So when you're doing, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna segue back off to what we were just talking about your scouting. Uh, when you're looking at your historical data and your game planning, are you spending a lot of time on like an Onyx or Spartan Forge or anything? And if you are, what is it you're looking for since you already have that historical data? Is there anything you're keying in on or anything you're looking at on maps that you're focused on?
So when I use historical data, it's usually something as simple as, well, I've seen this buck in this area. This is where I think his core area is. Hopefully, I know something about where he might be bedding at, but it's usually one chink in the armor. Like, I see him do something, and now I know what tree I need to be in and where I need to be. And I would say a big part of that accounts to the fact that, once I kill a buck, I'm messing around with the video camera, trying to get does on camera and stuff. And a lot of times, during the season, you'll see them do something to like, get away from you, or when I'm hunting does or whatever, I'll see them doing something. And every time that I see them doing something, I just remember that and say, like, with two of the bucks that I cranked this year, um, well, the third one that I shot in Ohio, the third buck of the year, not just in Ohio. I only shot one in Ohio. I'm just I
Everybody,
didn't shoot both
everybody's
of them
just.
in Ohio. So the one that I shot in Ohio, I hunted that buck in the same tree that I hunted him the year before, and he ended up busting me and spooking out of there, which I'm glad because he got a lot better this year than what he was last year. He was still kind of a funny deer, but the other two bucks that I cranked in New York, I seen both of those before season and knocked on doors and got permission to hunt them and looked at maps. And the maps have a big part to do with trying to get permission on properties, figuring out who owns them. And then if, e-scouting and trying to figure out what I think I could do on the property, which has become a big tool because I'm a very low pressure hunter. And so, for instance, both those properties, I seen those bucks in the early season. I never walked them or anything. I waited until I went to go hunt them, and then while I'm going in to go hunt, which, mind you, I'm walking into a piece of woods where I don't even know what tree I'm getting into. I don't know if I got a tree that I can get into. I don't know even what everything looks like. I don't know what the trails look like. I don't know what's there, and just walking in, figuring it out as I go. And so the uh the buck that I was chasing that had a drop time this year, it was a really cool deer. I wish I had a picture of him. But he grew a 4 point side, and then on this side he grew a brow tine, and then his um main beam turned right into a club and it went right down in front of his eyeball. It was the coolest thing. And I seen him in velvet. I'm like, I gotta kill this deer. So that buck was the number one buck I wanted to kill. And there was actually a 140-inch 10 pointer running with him and a 12 pointer running with him too. And the 12 pointer was probably pushing 130 inches. And to be completely honest, with the season I was having, I was going to kill any of them. But I go in there and I set up on a tree and as conservative as I could, because that property was only 3 acres. And couldn't get on the bigger piece. I had to kind of use what I had. And I get in there, I set up for I think it was somewhere around October 15th for the first sit on the drop time buck. And then I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going to hunt. So basically, what I was doing there is it was supposed to rain that night. So I went in for what you'd call an observation sit and just clarify what I'm going to do. And then everything got rained out of there. So I didn't have to worry about my scent. And I drew up my game plan for the rut. I figured the rut was going to be my best chance to kill him because I was trying to catch them cruising and they weren't moving a lot in the early season. They weren't cutting this trail that I needed them to cut very much in the early season. So I figured the rut comes, they're going to get dumb and they're going to cruise more. And that part of this has a lot to do with my strategies and stuff, is because just looking at a property and understanding what time of year I should hunt it, what part of the early season or late season I should hunt it, or even if I should use a bow or a gun. And I ended up going in on that deer, and then I didn't hunt that property until November 10th because of my hand. And when I got up in there and hunted him, I hunted 3 days. And this is a big tip I would say right here, is that I remember sitting in that tree, and a lot of guys like to bounce from tree to tree to tree, especially on, different properties. And when they're running cameras and they're getting bucks on this camera and that camera, they
Chasing
like to
cameras.
bounce around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember sitting in that tree and I'm like, I'm seeing these bucks, but they're on a property that I can't hunt. I'm in a tree on a property I can hunt, and I'm waiting for them to do what I need them to do so that I can kill them, even when I'm seeing them at 70 yards and I can't do nothing with them. And so it's kind of torturing me, and I'm debating on like moving properties. And I remember saying to myself, I'm like, look, you drew this plan up and you got to stick with it instead of hopping from tree to tree. And so that was the third morning, and I was going to give it one more sit in the morning. And I ended up shooting that buck. He he came, and that was actually a crazy part of it too, because so I'm messing around with the fox, and to make a long story short, the fox kind of comes. I see him on the other property, and he comes back around in front of me or behind me, and then I'm like, okay, well now I can shoot him. So I was gonna whack the fox, and I'm looking down, trying to see this fox, and then I just happened to look over, and damn near right under me, there the buck is. And so I swing over and grab my bow, and I yank that thing back. And thankfully, the guy that owned the bigger property told me right when I talked to him if I could hunt it. And he's like, "You can't hunt it, but if a deer, runs onto it, you need to go get it. Go ahead." So that was the crazy part about that was he runs off over into the woods, and I never stopped him, so he wasn't scared. And when I poked into the woods, it was like freaking 10 degrees, snowing all morning. And to be honest, it was just freaking cold, man. Like I was saying prayers, like, please let me get this over with. I'm done with this bull crap. Like it's a rut. And I'm like, I don't want to out here, man. This is like
Right.
Christmas. This is bullshit. And I pull into the woods, and I'm like, I'm going to have to grid search this buck because there's too much snow and the tracks are gone. And I'm like, by now, I gave him 20 minutes. I'm like, he's probably covered up in snow. And I look up, and he's looking right at me. He's 40 yards away, and he's still alive. So I shank him again. He falls over, and I walk up on him, and I grab his rack and pick his rack up. And he broke his damn drop tine off.
Oh.
I
That was
thought
his last
make
FU to you.
yeah, make you want to kick a fat kid in Kmart.
That's funny. Just for my own curiosity, I'm listening to you tell this story, and I'm trying to picture, like, give me the bird's eye view of what this 3 acres look like in comparison to the properties around it. Is this a is this like a connecting lot to two larger wood lots, or how does this 3 acres kind of lay out?
So that's what laid out pretty cool about it was the property was kind of roadside, and the house was up in the front. And if I'm drawing it kind of on my hand, I would say the house is right up here in the front. And then what you have is basically a 3 acre piece like this. And this is all goldenrod over in here, a tiny backyard. And then it turns into kind of willows and stuff. And back in those willows is where I had to hunt. And what these deer were doing is there was a snowmobile trail that was on both properties, like on the property line, but the bucks were cutting the edge of the property line, rubbing it up and, doing whatever. And that was where I had to, kind of mess around and get my opportunity.
Gotcha. Were they were deer bedding in that goldenrod at all, or was it?
I didn't the first day that I walked through there, I go through hell and high water through all this tall shit and goldenrod and I'm all tore up with prickers and stuff, and it's only 3 acres.
Yeah.
Took the hardest route to get through there. And then I get up in the tree and I look over and I can see the guy's backyard and I can see a clear lane to walk through. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, dude. So my access got a lot easier from that point, but I didn't kick any out of there. But I did see him traveling through it more. It's just seemed like there was a lot of great bedding in the area and some big bedding areas they were really taking advantage of.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's funny when you say that, like taking the hardest route in. I don't know how many times I've been. Um, One of my favorite things to do, Clint, is I travel to other states to hunt, but one of my favorite things to do, regardless of if it's here in Michigan, I don't even hunt my own 60 acres very often. I'll probably hunt that maybe 10 times throughout a season. It's a spot that, um, and you and I talked about this off air, but what I love about having my own property is I can modify, manage, and manipulate that property the way I want it so that I can hang preset stands and I can direct the deer through the property the way that I want them to use it. So it's very opportunistic hunting. I wait for the right conditions, the right wind, et cetera, et cetera. And when I go in there to hunt, I'm going in there to kill. I'm walking out to my stand, and in my mind, my tag's already punched. It's just a matter of letting that arrow go. Now, when I go to public land, I'm always going out with the mindset to kill, but I'm always going on to properties. Very rarely do I hunt the same public land or the same area of that public land multiple times. I try to go in, figure it out as I'm working in, get it done that time. Obviously, I make notes and I save things in my mind or on my maps for maybe the next year. But um, I don't know how many times I've gone into a property and I'm like pushing through the nastiest, thickest shit. I'm getting all my clothes snagged up. I'm getting tore up by prickers. And then I finally get to the area I'm at and I'm like, oh, I could have, I might have had to walk an extra, mile to get here, but I could have followed this system and just nice, easy walk in. So it always cracks me up. I don't know how many times I've just tore myself up. And Ohio is notorious for that. You get into that Greenbrier in the hill country of Ohio, and the shit's damn near impenetrable, and you just tear yourself up trying to get through it, and then you finally get to where you're going, and you're like, oh, if I'd have just ridge hopped 2 ridge systems, I could have stayed up in a higher elevation and got in here easy peasy. So that cracks me up. To at least I'm not the only one, and it kind of makes me chuckle that on 3 acres you're just out there. I can just picture you just getting thrashed out there, and then you get there and you're watching and you're looking at the swing set in the backyard, and you're like, oh, I could have just done this. Do you do much public land in New York?
So I do poke around on public land, and one thing that has surprised me is that if you have the level of if you kind of have enough skill to do it, you can definitely be successful on there. And there's some studs, but for me, my strategies didn't seem to change a whole ton load. But the thing that is kind of funny, and you would think it's the opposite, is for me, I thrive on smaller pieces because this is what you have, this is what it looks like, this is what we have to work with, and you only have so much to work with. There's only so many places to hunt it. Now, when you get into hundreds and hundreds of acres of public land, your first thing is like, where do I even start? That's where I was at with it when I wanted to scout. And so I just started taking sections and just checking it off the list. Like I would push through stuff and check it out and here and there. And a couple of things that I noticed about the public is not a lot of people are going too far off the road. They don't want to kill a deer and drag the thing for forever away. And, you know, one of my buddies, I was dropping pins for him this year, and he's going and hunting these spots, and he's sending me videos of nice bucks. And he almost got it done several times, but I remember sending him to a couple spots, and I told him, "Don't you dare shoot a doe. If you shoot a doe, I ain't helping you drag that thing out. I'm
You're
gonna
on your own, bud.
lose my number."
Yeah, blocked. As soon as he calls, blocked.
But the public land, I was surprised. You know, the one thing that I would say about public land is it can be intimidating because other people can hunt it. You don't have the control, and those two things are a little overwhelming. They're usually some pretty big pieces too. But the one thing that I learned is deer do not know what a property line is, and in pressured states, especially, um, you never know where you're going to find a big one, and you got to do the scouting. And if anything, you might even be better off finding them on public because um, of those factors. There's not that many people that are willing to even give it a shot. There's and most of the people who are skilled hunters, they have private property, you know, and that's what a lot of people don't get is when you first starting out and you don't have anything, well, you're probably going to end up on some public, right? And some people never do, but say they do. Okay, but even if you are good at hunting and you go and start hunting public, when you're running into people on it and crap's happening, this and that, and you start picking up some private, you're more apt to hunt that private because you don't have to deal with the bullshit. Pardon my French.
No, I get it.
And so that is something that I've learned is that because of those factors, you're not in for as big of a jam as you think.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, do you notice even on the smaller tracks of public or on private, I'm sorry, um, do you notice surrounding pressure uh, causing an immense change to how the deer are using the areas that you're hunting?
Yeah, so that's something that I mean, I've kind of known it, but in the past couple of years, I've seen even more is how much the pressure really does affect those bigger deer. Because, you know, the bigger bucks, they don't take chances that other deer will. And so when we talk about hunting big deer and the bigger deer that we have or whatever, and um they're always going to have a little pocket somewhere safe. And once they may mess around on these properties that get pressured, but once people start hunting them, they know where to go, and they're going to end up on like 50 to 150 acres, or sometimes even less. I mean, I'm finding them on sometimes even 5 or 10 acres. And they're not leaving that spot because they know they're safe there. And then when nighttime comes, they'll do whatever they want.
Yeah,
And it's hard to catch them slip up in that situation. So something that I really try to do is I try to find those little pockets exactly where they live and where they feel safe, and then I try to hunt that. But it's a very delicate situation because of how smart they are. You
sure.
almost end up in a one and done deal. And the reason why in those specific situations where I know exactly where he's bedding and I know it's his honey hole and I know he feels safe there, I may only poke that once or twice, and I'm just not going to keep hunting it because I feel like if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm doing it right, I'm going to see that buck. My shot is going to count, and I'm going to see him. Now, in a sit or two, if I haven't seen him, whatever I'm thinking, something ain't right, or he's not there, or he's somewhere else, or maybe I screwed something up. But in these pressured states, the biggest thing is not blowing them out of the area
Yeah.
because I remember a buck a couple years back, big 8 points. I was walking my girlfriend's dog at the time. And the wind was blowing into this bedding, and it was all like mostly goldenrod and some saplings. And the wind's blowing into the bedding. I look over, and this big 8 pointer steps up, and then a 6 pointer steps up with him. So I go running through the process and end up getting permission on the property. And I'm talking to the guy, and he's like, I get pictures of these bucks all the time, but you never see them. So right then and there, I'm like, okay, like I had a hunch of what was going on. I didn't tell him about what I knew. And the simple reason why is because Like, can I tell him and can he go take the opportunity and maybe kill the deer? Sure, maybe. But, I feel like people that work for it, the people that earn the knowledge are the people that kind of deserve those cracks, right? And so I'm talking to him and he gave me free reign on the property. He goes, I pretty much gave up on it. He was walking, literally walking to his tree stand within 50 yards of where this buck was bedding. And the buck wasn't moving.
Yeah.
He was staying right there. And I figured that out. I go in there and I believe I pulled it one or two sits 200 yards away just to see if he was dumb enough to do it. But there was another guy hunting that property next door because I have permission on two of those properties right there. I picked up two of them to try to kill that buck. And it was kind of an L-shaped deal, and he was on this side, and the other side was the other guy's. And that other guy was kind of messing it up for me. I couldn't do nothing with it. So then I decided it was just one of those deals where if you're going to kill this deer, you need to get within 50, 60 yards of his bed. So the day I go in, I push in on him. And this was before I got a good hang and bang setup. So I might have had that time. I don't think I did. I think I had a climber and I couldn't get into any of the trees. So now I'm like, okay, I got to stay on the ground, and I was partially prepared for that. So I'm literally putting face paint on, and I don't even have my release on yet. I just got up in there, and this semi is pulling over because I'm right next to like a main road, and he Jake brakes a couple times. And the third Jake brake, dude, it sounded exactly like a buck snort wheeze. Like that's what it sounded like to me. So I hear it and I'm talking to myself and I'm like, he's gonna get up. And then I'm like, no, he's not. And then I'm like, he's gonna get up. So I I reached to grab my release and I started putting my release on. And I go to pick my bow up, and as I'm lifting my bow up, I look out and 50 yards away, this monster 8-pointer standing there staring right at me. That buck took off running out of there. Never bedded there again.
Wow.
Never.
Oh,
I hunted that. I hunted it 2 or 3 times after that, trying to get back on him. Nothing but 2-year-olds in there.
huh. Well, you beat him at his own game right there, and maybe he just instinctually was like, nobody's
Oh,
supposed to
he
get
knew.
that close before I know that I need to know they're here. How did this predator
Yeah.
get this close to me with me not even knowing it? And he just no longer felt like that bed was worth its salt, apparently. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I mean, he had that other guy so figured out that, you know, he was pulling in. I mean, he was parking 100 yards from him, and then he's walking, right by him at 50 yards. And so the buck, he knew what was going on all the time. And when he doesn't hear me or doesn't see me or anything, and then he stands up, which I mean, would I have killed him that day? I don't know. But I could tell you I was 60 yards away from him bedded up, and the wind was blowing in my face, and his scrape was in between me and him. So, I
You
mean,
win
I was
again.
in between him and yeah. And I mean, I feel like I probably would have whacked that buck. But yeah, one encounter, one scare, and that Joker was out of there. And that's one of the things that I love about big mature deer is like that big 7-pointer I was telling you about. He's hiding on one of the spots that I'm hunting. I keep punching my tag on something that, like, do I want to shoot it? Yeah. But is it necessarily the biggest deer that I could kill? Probably not. And so I have a standard of something that I will shoot. Um, and when it comes by, I'll shoot it. And then sometimes I end up regretting it. Well, that 7-pointer, I did a great job of hunting him in the early season, man. Every time I went in there, I was seeing him and I was taking advantage of different things. Like where there was human intrusion and where they would expect it. And it was throwing him off because he couldn't, he can't pick up on human intrusion in areas where it happens all the time. And I was taking advantage of that and getting in trees and small trees. But I'm telling you, I was getting in trees that were that big. I'm not bullshitting you. With the stand that I have, even at, 210 pounds. And that tree starts going, yeah. I'm like, oh, well,
Yep.
I'm
What kind of
here,
setup are
buddy.
you running?
So I'm running a hunting beast tree stand and climbing sticks.
Right on.
And with that buck, like my third or fourth setup, I only got 12 foot off the ground, and he cut by at 70 yards, and there was deer in there all over the place. I never seen him, and he caught some movement or something. I still don't know what happened, but I seen him. Well, the wind shifted once or twice, and I think he caught a whiff of me, and he took off, and that'll be that was the last time that I seen him that season on that property. So it only takes one time with those big mature deer, and you're done. And I think that's what is a hard thing for a lot of people to understand, is because all the ground scent that you leave, they can smell that, and they know. They don't need to see you. They don't need to wind you.
Yeah.
You know, that ground scent is a killer, man.
100%. Yeah, for sure. When you're working through your in-season strategy, or let's call it you've got this deer, you feel like you've got this deer pegged. Like, okay, I know where this deer is. You've made your decision on the kill setup, how you're going to go about that. What factors, whether is it wind, is it time of day, is it time of year, what decisions kind of drive you to say today's the day I'm going in? And you know, I'm assuming you're like me, where when you make that decision, when you've got that gameplay, when you go to make that move, you're going in with a high competency rate that you're going to kill. What is it that you're looking for that triggers that decision to say today's the day I'm going to that spot and I'm killing that deer?
So it's definitely like a situational thing. And most of the time I'm picking um whatever I think is best for that property and that deer. Like the drop time buck, I went in on did that scouting mission halfway through October, which was really just more of a scouting thing and figuring it out. And then it rained, so I got that, all that washed out of there. And I figured that set up, but I picked the rut there because they weren't cutting that trail like I wanted them to, but I knew that they would be kind of mindlessly wandering during the rut. So for that specific setup, that's what I chose there. Because I didn't have access to the buck bedding. Now, the second buck that I whacked, I had access to his bedding. He was bedding on the property, and I knew he was. And so that's a better situation, because now I know exactly where he is. I have access to him, and I can get as close as I want. And so for me, knowing where he's bedding, I need the right wind for him to bed exactly where I want him to, because that buck there he had 5 different beds all in a 40 by 30 area. And so you have to know what bed he's going to be in on what wind and where he's likely to go from that bed. And so with, you know, what I knew about the situation, um, again, I poked that in the early season, midway through October, seen a couple bucks, and there was a bigger one in there that I think I blew out. But in my mind, I'm still hunting that bigger buck, even though he was gone. And I knew the bed was being used because I was finding fresh crap in there and stuff. Because the second time that I hunted it in the rut, the buck made it by me, and I almost killed him. It just didn't come together, and he was nice, but I got so frustrated, I lost my train of thought. I lost my train of focus, and I didn't even realize he went back to that bed. So that was the moment when I blew him out of there. I was mad about it and not thinking, and I walked right by that bed. And then by the time I realized, oh, you just walked right by his bed and blew him out of there, which sounds stupid. That's what happens when you get a little mad. But the buck blows out. So I'm like, okay, well, it's going to rain. I'm going to go in and sleet. So I'm like, I'm going to go look. So I found all of his beds, and the one bed was on the point next to the field. And so the field edge is here, and he's bedding right here, basically. I knew that the wind needed to be blowing out onto that field. for him to be sitting in that bed and watching that field. So now I know what bed he's going to be in. Now I know what wind to hunt on. And I even, did the Dan Infalt deal, and knelt down in there to see what he can see. So now I know what I can get away with as far as access goes. So because in that last week of October, they're doing a lot of running around, man. They're doing a lot of running around. And that first week in November, they're doing quite a bit of running around too. And so I said, well, when are you going to know he's in that bed? The lockdown. I knew he would be in there in that bed in the lockdown because there'd be so many hot does. And this is something a lot of people don't know, but I can tell you, I'm seeing it, and I know it's true, is the does come to the buck. The does want to be bred by the buck. When you see a buck chasing the doe, if it's a younger buck, it can easily be just a buck chasing a doe. But if you see an older buck chasing a doe, most of the time, what are you going to see behind him? Another buck.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so you're going to have a buck and a doe bedded up, and they're doing their thing in his core area. And then another buck comes in and pushes them out. That's where that chase begins. But the original game altogether is the buck is doing whatever it is he wants to do, and the doe wants to be bred by him. That's why you see so many does laying in scrapes. They're waiting for him.
Yeah.
They're seeking him out. And so I knew in the lockdown, with that bed being where it was in the area, I'm like, he's going to be in there with a couple of does for sure. So I drew up a game plan to get within 50, 60 yards of that bed. And then I hit the old grunt call, and I pulled him out of there, because when you get him within 50 yards of them things and they're bedded up and you hit a grunt call, it's not if they're coming, it's when.
Yep.
They're coming.
Yep.
And I used the terrain features, which was a ravine, to force him to come right down the pipe. And that's when he met his demise. But for both those properties, the strategies differentiated a little bit. And that's where I try to be able to hunt just about anything, because some properties, all you're going to get is a pass-through trail that bucks use. Sometimes you have access to bedding. Sometimes, you don't have access to their bedding. It's or you just have a food source, a field. So whatever it is that I can hunt is how I'm going to approach the situation. And like late season, I always try to see that buck out there. In early season, I always try to see those bucks out in those fields before I ever go out onto the fields. It's so that I know something's going on. I know he's using this trail, or I know he's using this field. I know he's daylighting, or I know exactly where he's bedding. So some sort of factual evidence is usually driving me to make these decisions.
Going back to what you had just said about the bucks being locked down and bedded up with does. So 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago. I don't remember exactly what weekend the youth hunt is in Ohio, but 2 years ago I chose to go down. I was going to be in Ohio for work. I do a lot of travel for work throughout the U.S., but I spend a lot of time traveling. Uh, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, kind of through that area. And I was working in Ohio, and I decided I was going to bring my bow, and I was going to take Friday off, and I was going to stay and hunt Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it's the weekend of the youth hunt in Ohio, and I was going public land hunting. And I had this spot that I've always wanted to go hunt. I felt I was a little late in November, but I felt like because of the way that the property laid out, and because it's not a very large CRP field, but it is a very well hidden CRP field. I felt like I could get up tight to that CRP, get up. I hunt out of a saddle setup. I figured I could get up in my saddle and I could glass that CRP, and eventually I would pick up. I felt very high confident that there was a buck bedded up with a doe in that CRP. So to go to what you were just saying, I was just getting ready to get my stuff set up in a tree where I felt like this is where I need to be, and all of a sudden I heard uh, a really loud grunt in the CRP, and before I could even do anything, a buck had run into that CRP, kicked up the doe and buck that were bedded in it, and the chase ensued. And they ran right past me. They ran up the ridge. I know the doe saw me because she damn near ran me over. I mean, that's how close she ran past me. But they ran past me. The second buck ran past me. They went up the ridge. I'm scrambling, trying to get my stuff together. I get myself up in the tree. I don't have my bow up yet. And they turn back around. They're coming again. And she picked up another buck. So I ended up with 3 bucks in this doe. And I spent that entire day covered up in these deer. They were just running into the CRP, kicking back out, running up the ridge. I drew my bow back, I think, 6 times that day. Never could get one of them to stop, but it was one of the most fun hunts I've ever had, to just nonstop action, and none of that. I might have been able to get that buck up, but I don't know if I could have pulled him out of that CRP because he had that doe locked down, unless I got really aggressive and tried to move in on him and tried to pull almost like a spot and stalk situation. But like you said, yeah, the only reason that chase ensued was because another buck picked her scent up, and he bombed right into that CRP and got her up on her feet. So, um, yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, especially in areas.
And,
Go ahead.
and you mentioned going to Ohio late. It was cool that you said that. What time of the November was it when you went?
It's during their youth season. I want to say it was
So that had to have been when I went, and that was let me
it's
see.
late
I
November.
think
It's either the weekend
yeah,
before Thanksgiving or the weekend after Thanksgiving. It's right around Thanksgiving is
yeah.
when that took place.
I'm trying to think. I can't even remember what day I shot my buck in Ohio. Um, but it was funny that you said that because I've really been oh, the first week in November has been really known for like everyone goes crazy, right? And I've talked to a couple guys and they told me, well, I like the second week of November more. And so I dipped into that and I've actually found that that's like when you can catch them being really stupid. And I was catching, I was this year, it was in the, I want to say I shot that buck on the 24th. I don't want to move my phone to look. I'm not positive, but I know it was like the third week and toward the end of the month there.
That sounds
And
right.
yeah, and I was thinking to myself while I was driving out there, like, man, I'm really in for it. Like the rut's not going on, and this is going to be tough. So I went about my normal sequence, and my strategy was to hunt buck bedding and to try to catch some cruisers. So I stuck with what I knew as far as the bedding goes. The bedding's kind of is what ended up paying off. Oddly enough, I caught that buck on a doe. And what I've come to realize is if it's a big mature deer, he's going to be doed up the whole month. Yeah. If there isn't weather stopping him from like doing whatever he wants, like cold weather making him go feed, or if he's just not totally, even when they're freaking totally beat down, they're still going to do it. They'll just dog until they die.
Yeah.
But what I noticed is that they're in even in that last week, they're still going to be running, but um, because of the pressure and everything, they're going to be harder to find. And that was the only thing that struck me. And the odd thing is this, where I shot that buck. I seen him the year prior, um, and he was still in there. So that solidifies what I was talking about earlier about how they don't move very far in the rut. And another interesting thing is November 10th when I was hunting my drop time buck. Um, those bucks, there was 3 of them, a 2-year old, a 3-year old, and the other one had to have been 5-year older. I seen all of them summering there. And when I hunted that and ended up killing him on the 10th, or I started on the 10th, I think it was 7th to the 10th I hunted and killed him on the 10th. All those bucks were still there. So their core range at 50 turns into about 50 to 150 acres. And that's due to like the landscape. When you move to a different, or you're hunting a different state that doesn't have a lot of big tree lots and wood lots and a lot of farm country, a lot of ag, and that creates a lot of cruising because they don't have that land to just hang out on. And then if you add more even buck to doe ratio to that, then it's going to get even better. Um, but areas where they have the woods, where they have the areas to hide, and where they have the does and less competition because of a terrible buck to doe ratio, food and water, they don't have to go anywhere. And so that's what can make it very difficult as well. Um, but I have found once you know where they're at, they're not going anywhere. So
Makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I've always loved that beginning in November, but man, so that was 2 years ago, and that was late November. And then last year I went to Ohio and on my first sit in killed a great buck. I mean, 140 inch, just a beautiful buck. But that again, that was on November 17th, I believe. Um, so it got me thinking. At least it's got my gears turning. That's 2 years of data where it's like, okay, yeah, the madness is kind of over, but there's still does that are in heat that are looking to be bred, and the madness of the early part of November is kind of petered off. There's not near the pressure. It's got me thinking maybe for some of my hunts, particularly in where I go in Ohio, for bow hunting, it's definitely got me thinking maybe the latter part of November might be the ticket for me. So hopefully not too many people are listening to this and don't start changing up their November hunt plans.
I was and I'm in like the flatter land in Ohio. And the one thing that I don't know if this is a pressure deal or if I just put myself in the right positions and the deer feel safe because it is hunting swamp areas. And if you're smart and you pick the right areas, you can always put yourself in the game. But I was noticing down there they seem to, well, the bigger, more mature deer didn't as much, but I was seeing a decent amount of traveling. But back to what you were saying, I do think that area, that time frame gets good because of the amount of does that are going out of estrus have already been bred. Now there's less of them, but those big mature deer know that they can find them. But now they have to work for them.
Yeah,
You know, it's just like an apple tree when all the apples first get ripe, it's easy pickings. But the more that you pick, the harder it gets. And for the bucks with the
reach.
does, yep, now they got to work for it.
Yep, yep. No, that's funny that we both had some similar late November opportunities down there in Ohio. When you think of New York hunting, do you find it comparable to any place else you've hunted? Uh, I mean, I know at least based on what we've talked about, it sounds like you kind of use the same mindset, the same strategy, uh, kind of regardless of where you hunt. But is there anything that you find comparable terrain wise or how the deer behave to other places? Because one thing I've always said, um, in all the places I've had the opportunity and the blessings to chase whitetails, deer always do deer things, but there's nuances based on the terrain, based on where they live. Is there anything you find comparable in New York to places you've hunted in, say, Tennessee or in other areas?
Yeah. So in Ohio, I've just noticed that, your 2-year-olds and your 3-year-olds are a lot more reckless. I don't think that they have the same consequences that a buck in New York might, and that's a good thing for people in Ohio, and it's really a compliment because what I'm telling you is that you have a better state to hunt, and it's better, well, more managed. Because believe me, I would love for these deer to start acting like that. Anytime they want to, they can, because they either get smart around here quick or they die. But
Yeah,
I definitely did notice that the 2-year-olds and the 3-year-olds they take a lot more chances. They're a lot more visible. You see them a lot more than I would say in New York.
sure.
And
Sure.
and again, a big part of that has to do with how many more bucks there are. because there's definitely more.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Was it Morgan Freeman in his Shawshank Redemption? Get busy living or get busy dying. Yeah, those bucks
Yeah,
down there, they're living a pretty good life. And like you said, that's not a knock on Ohio. That's a credit to Ohio. Just because I don't ever want to say hunting's easy because it's not easy. But again, you and I were talking offline, and it's like, you know, a lot of people in Michigan think Michigan's the hardest state to hunt. It's a challenging state to hunt, but I picture places like West Virginia, New York, a lot of that New England territory. To me, that, and I've never hunted it, so I can't say, but that seems like a harder style of hunting to me than does Michigan. But if you come from a place like Michigan, or you come from a place like New York or West Virginia, and you go hunt in Ohio or in Indiana or in Missouri or in Iowa or a Kansas, if you've gotten good at killing deer in a state like New York or in a state like Michigan, PA, West Virginia, um, you're going to be a killer in those other states. It's just a matter of putting in the homework and getting into the spots you need to get into. So yeah, it's not a knock on those states by any means. It's just hunting deer's hard no matter where it is. But when you come from certain areas and you've had to grow up really cutting your teeth, it can make going into some other places really easy to hunt. And like I look at Illinois, for example, fantastic deer state, obviously. The Golden Triangle, I grew up watching, TV hunting shows of Pike, Brown, and Adams County in Illinois. And I finally got an opportunity back in 2007 to go down and film for somebody, and then I went in 2008 and hunted Illinois. And I was young in my hunting life then, but even almost 20 years ago, when I got to Illinois and I'm actually going in to try to figure out where I'm going to hunt, I'm like, well, this is a 900-acre farm. There's 12 fingers of woods on this whole 900 acres. They all lead to the same primary finger, and the rest of this is ag. So it's not that difficult for me to be like, okay, all these fingers come into this main finger. If I get into this finger, the odds are I'm going to see a deer. So, and I killed my very biggest buck my first sit in Illinois. I mean, I hung my stand at 11 o'clock. I got in it at 1 o'clock, and I shot this buck at like 125, 170-inch whitetail. My biggest, could be the biggest one I ever killed, but it was by far from the hardest deer I've ever hunted by any means. And again, that's not a knock on Illinois. And it's not like there's 170s behind every tree in Illinois, but it just, when you come from certain areas and you go hunt places like that, it's just like, man, now I get why people come here. It's not because it's easy, but it's so much easier to narrow down the places to set up on them for sure.
yeah, and that's what's special about New York is how hard it is. I really do enjoy the challenge. For me, that's what drew me in is the struggle. Like, no, this isn't easy. And a lot of people give up and not very many people are that great at it because of the difficulty. And if anything, I would say those odds being against you teach you faster because um your consequences are higher when you have less bucks and when you do blow it on a buck, well, you really don't know necessarily when you might see another one, and the consequences on the properties themselves are a little harder because those does are stupid smart too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just really comes from like you go from a real tough state to hunt like New York or Michigan, you go to another place that's better, well, more managed, a better state, and it's like Pacific Playland.
Yeah. 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 And I love hunting Michigan. Like I embrace the grind. I love the challenge. Um, Shooting 120 class deer in Michigan, to me, and other guys in Michigan might disagree, but if you can consistently kill a 120-inch deer in Michigan, you're doing something right. I don't care what
Yeah,
kind of property you're
and
working with.
I'm getting past few years, I've been getting more into specifically targeting those big mature deer because for a long time I just had a standard of like, okay, this is what I'll shoot. and I just hung by that standard. Shot plenty of nice deer because of that. But in the past few years, I've realized that a lot of the times I was hunting the right way, and a lot of the times I was doing what I needed to do to kill these bucks. But at the time, I didn't realize how crazy and how good what I was doing actually was. Um, I didn't realize it at the time. Like I was walking up on 140-inch deer and looking at them like, okay, where's the 170? And then I hunt for 2 years and don't see another 140-inch deer, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. And then I realized, I'm like, do you know what you did that day and what you were thinking compared to what was really going on? And the reaction that should have told me that too was I cranked this real big 10 pointer on a property. And the guy that owned it, he was a Christian, and he always had the same look on his face. Didn't smile a lot, didn't do anything. And when you talk to him, he just kept that look on his face, and it was hard to move it. And I try to be a funny guy, and I usually can get reactions out of people. And even when, I would crack a good joke, he didn't really show any change in his face. Well, the very first time I hunted that property is when I killed that 10 pointer. And when I was walking out to go hunt, I ran into him and he's like, "Oh, good luck." And as I'm walking away, he goes, "Wouldn't it be funny if you shot a big one this year?" So, or today, he goes, and I'm looking at the property and I draw up like how I'm going to sneak through this property and hunt it. And I believe it was like the 17th of November. I'm not positive, but somewhere between the 17th and 24th in there. And I'm walking through. And to make a long story short, the plan that I drew up worked, and I ended up shooting the buck. And where it died was in a grape vineyard, and he was 10 yards off the edge of that grape vineyard, right off the row. And so I go over to the guy and I tell the guy, I'm like, "Yeah, I just shot a big one," and he didn't believe me. He didn't believe me. And we're sitting there going back and forth for 5 minutes, and I'm like, no, like I'm serious. I shot a big buck, and it's laying in this grape vineyard, and I was wondering if you could take your jitney to go get it. It was like an hour after I walked out. So I come back and he doesn't believe me. And finally I said, "Look, I have $100 bill here in my wallet." I said, "I'm gonna grab it and I'm gonna hold it and we'll go out there." I said, "If the buck ain't there, I'll hand it to you." "All right, you better not be wasting my time." And we hop in the jitney and we go ripping on over there. Like I said, very quiet guy. Didn't His facial expression didn't change much. We go down the edge of those grape rows, and when I originally walked up on the buck on myself, I was like, "Oh, it's a nice deer," but I always hated tight rack deer. I love a wide buck. So that one was 16 and a half inches, 17 inches wide, and didn't look that wide. So I was really paying attention to the spread and not the tine length and how big the buck actually was. And it didn't help that I shot one that same year that was an absolute toad and just really wide and awesome. But anyway, so me and him, we pull up to the edge of those grape vineyards, and he goes, "Holy shit!" He couldn't believe it. He goes, "I don't believe it." And I start gutting the thing and getting ready to get on the jitney. He's just staring at it and staring at it and staring at it. And then I'm like walking by, and he like kind of sort of grabs me by the arm, and I turn and I look at him. He goes, "You don't understand." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "There's been people hunting this property for 3 years. Like the last time a deer alone got dragged off this property was 3 years ago." And I didn't even really think about it until later on. And then I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, wow, I mean, people have been hunting and haven't even shot a deer off it in 3 years. And I just went and hunted it and shot probably the biggest buck running around in an hour. And a lot of that stuff just escaped my brain for some time, where I don't know if maybe I just didn't give myself the credit for it, or because you're always on to the next one. It don't matter how many of these things you shoot. I mean, I'll shoot a 170, which I haven't, but if I did, the next day I'm gonna be like, I'm ready for another tag, man.
Yeah,
Like it's an addiction.
it's our heroin, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I can't get enough of it, dude. I've killed 3 this year. I think you did too. And then by the end of the season, I'm ready to go to Tennessee and go deer hunting more. Like you just can't itch that itch enough.
You can't. Nope. Nope. It's an addiction, man. That's for sure. And there's far worse things we could be addicted to. And the beauty of it is, and uh, for listeners out there, Clint and I have only had a couple conversations back and forth, but um, I feel like your mentality, your style really lines up with mine. I'm an opportunistic guy. If I go out and I'm hunting a particular area that I know holds good deer, I'm not necessarily holding out for, let's call it, deer X. If deer Y walks by and he trips my trigger and I get fired up, I'm not ashamed to shoot that deer. But I love a monster buck. I mean, honestly, anybody that hunts deer, they're lying if they say they don't. Nobody
Yeah, well,
nobody
I mean
doesn't
that's
not
what
like a monster buck. I mean,
that's what cracks me up about the meat hunters is because you know how you can't eat the antlers. Yeah, well, if a 12 point is standing next to a doe and the doe's a better eater, which one are you going to shoot?
exactly,
You're
exactly.
shooting the damn 12 pointer. Don't lie.
Don't lie.
And
Yeah.
and to go with what you were just saying, like I usually, other than historical data, I go to Ohio and I'm totally blind,
Yep.
not running any cameras. And it really gets to people because I'll go out there and I'll kill a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, but it's a pressured property. There's a ton of other people hunting it, and I have to keep those realistic goals. And for me, I know I kind of do the opposite in New York. I try to do better in New York because it's home state, have more time, and I can do, what I want. But I've learned in Ohio, in the years that I've hunted it, how many giants have I seen out there? Like actual bucks I've seen over 130. Before it got pressured real hard, I seen probably one that went 150, 160. But since it's gotten hammered hard and hit real hard, like, if you kill a 130, you're doing damn good. So, like, I'm not very picky when I go out there. I go out there more to have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll target what I can here in New York. I'm getting a little bit more pickier about it, but you know, it's the thrill of the chase is what I'm really after.
Same here, man. Same here. And I love to eat venison. So if a fat nanny walks by me, and I'm as long as I'm not a mile and a half deep on public, she's getting smacked. So um, yeah, man. The Ohio stuff, just the out of state stuff in general, I'm the same way. I don't. I'm just going based on historical data. I don't run trail cameras. This year, um, and to go back to what you said about how picky you are, if I get an opportunity to go down there with my bow, it's usually for 3 to 4 days. I always go down for the late muzzleloader. That's kind of like the cap to my season. It's the very last hunt I do is my January 3rd to the 7th hunt with muzzleloader down there in Ohio. It's just it's kind of the crescendo of the season, and I've only got 4 days to hunt. It's not like I can sit there and I'm not. If a 120 walks past me, the odds are it's probably getting a piece of lead flung at it. I don't have 4 days, or I don't have 4 months to go chase these things. I got 4 days to do it, and this year with the with Ohio upping their tags to $400, it's
Yeah. Let me tell you what.
that's
I couldn't believe that crap, dude. I was freaking mad about that. I mean, I didn't get a warning or anything. So she's ringing up and she goes $400 and I go,
yeah.
"What?"
Did you guys increase it to a $2 state?
Yeah, well, like where's he tied up at?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't have a warning either. I used the Ohio Fish and Game app on my phone. I didn't get to go down there and bow hunt, so I didn't even buy my tag until I was down there for muzzleloader hunting. And I pulled the app up and I'm ringing up and it's like 399.93, and I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm going back, like, did I like
select
Yeah,
some
me too.
special tag, and I'm like, no, 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 this is right. And then I was like, I do remember. You ever listen to the Hunter podcast?
I don't think I have.
Okay, well, uh, I can't remember the two guys' names that do that podcast, but I do remember them saying something because they're like on the edge of Ohio and PA, and I thought I remembered them saying something about non-resident tags in Ohio price increase, but I didn't put two and two together until I bought that tag. So, and
Yeah.
I will tell you also, every time I go to Ohio for muzzleloader season, I usually see a fair amount of out-of-state hunters. Um, this year, I only saw a couple of out-of-state trucks. Now I'm sure guys are still going down there, but
Well, I think that was their goal behind it.
I think so too. I know from what I've heard, a lot of resident hunters wanted to see a little bit more money in the kitty from non-resident hunters, and I can totally respect that. Um, for the quality of deer you can go down there and hunt in Ohio, it really was a steal for the price of the tag prior to this year. And I'll still pay $400 to go down there and hunt deer just because I love to go down there. But I think it did kind of what they wanted it to do. Maybe maybe thinned it out a little bit. I'm sure people will cycle back into it, but yeah, man, it's a fun time. So we've been going almost 2 hours, Clinton. I could probably go all night, but I want to talk about a couple other things. So you and I were talking yesterday offline, and you had mentioned that something that you're starting to get into is working with other hunters, like doing some like consultation for those guys. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So I do some whitetail consulting, and this year I ended up with I think 5 guys, and 4 out of the 5 ended up with bucks, and it's become a fun thing for me to do, and a way to make a little bit of money. I try to make it very affordable, and the whole point of it is to get other people deer. But what I'm learning is that it seems like I mean they say like 10% of hunters kill 90% of the deer, something like that. And whatever people are passionate about is what they're going to study, right?
Sure.
And I feel like you have people that like deer hunting that want to deer hunt, but they don't really show interest in it until season hits. Whereas me and you, we think about it every day.
Yep.
So I run into, people that have other hobbies and have other things going on, and they need a little help. And I've this year, it ranged from people who have been hunting for quite some time to even people that were older than me, to total beginners. And the one thing that was saying is like, a second set of eyes is never going to be a bad thing.
Sure.
And when I am chatting with these guys and going through, some of the stuff, you start to kind of unload the puzzle on them, and they start to pick up on it, and it's great to see that. It's great to see them start picking up on it and then eventually end up shooting, their biggest buck to date. I had 4 out of the 5 people that I was working with this year kill um a nice buck. And the 5th guy, he was chasing an absolute giant. I mean, an absolute giant. And I didn't get to walk his property. I didn't get to run him through everything. We got together real late. In that one, I'm like, I wouldn't even show a freaking picture of this thing. It's that big. But that one, it hurt because I know I'm very confident that if me and him could have walked that property a decent time before season, I could have helped him hang stands and get winds and everything set up. He would have smoked that thing because, dude, he's listening to everything I'm saying. And eventually, and right around the end of October, because what had happened was in the beginning of the year, the beginning of the season, they hung stands late. Like it was either week before season or even during season. I can't remember, but it was close.
Yeah.
And I told him, I'm like, that's gonna really affect these deer. And like now we're really gonna have to wait to get him back in here. Like I'm like, we're just gonna have to stay out and wait until he starts daylighting because he was running a couple cameras. So to a T, what I'm telling him starts happening, like to a T. And there was moments when he starts questioning it, like, "You're sure I shouldn't be hunting right now?" I'm like, buddy, I'm as sure as bread has yeast in it. You do not want to be out there right now. And eventually, the buck starts daylighting again because after he hung the stands, that thing just ghosted him. It was gone. And then it starts showing up and starts daylighting, and I'm, start telling him, okay, it's time to go hunt him. But I had no idea where he's going.
Yeah.
I mean, other than what he's showing me on a map, but I can't see the woods. I can't see the trails. I can't see what the deer are doing. I have no idea where this thing is bedding or none of it. And so when I walk a property, I can figure all that out. And that one hurt. But the other ones were it was very great to see those guys get their reward at the end because walking the properties and explaining stuff to them
Yeah.
and them going through the motions was awesome. And then hearing the updates like that worked and I can't believe it. Like this is working. I'm deer hunting. I'm actually killing bucks now.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Heck yeah, man. That's awesome because it's a labor of love. And if you can throw a little change in your pocket doing it, all that does is help fund you to go do it for, you know, another person or for next season. That monster, do you know, has that guy talked to you at all? Did that buck make it through?
As far as I know, it did.
Oh,
I, me and him actually talked about it, and he gave me some details. But the thing's just smart, and he's got a honey hole like I've been talking about, and he's got a pretty good setup there. So he's going to be a hard one to kill. I've been talking to the guy, and I'm hoping that when this stuff melts, he's going to want me to go out there and walk it with him so we can get that thing killed next year. Because at this point, I just want to see it,
sure.
and I want him to kill it because I mean, how great that would be for me and for him to
Absolutely.
kill it, and for me to be able to help him is just the icing on the cake because that thing was just enormous.
That'd be a cool story too to have 2 years of going after this guy and then to make it happen. So I'll be pulling for you. I'll be pulling for this guy too. It's funny the older you get into hunting, the more you start pulling for the other guy, right? Like when I was young, like if I knew of a good buck, and I'm not talking like record setting bucks, but if there was a good buck around the areas that I was hunting, it was like if somebody else killed it, I was like pissed. I'm like I can't shooting the deer I wanted to kill, and now it's like, man, it's part of the game, dude. They're not my deer. Like it's just cool to see that evolution. And how my thought process goes and see, like, I'm sure when you were younger, if you saw that buck, you'd have been beating on every door around that to try to
Yeah.
kill it versus going to somebody else and trying to help them kill it. So
And that's the most interesting thing about it is like when I first got into this and when I even back a couple of years ago when I was kind of progressing, some of the deer I seen were like holy crap, and I didn't even have a clue like how special seeing those were and what I had in front of me, and I didn't have the skill set to even hunt them, and now I do. And it's hard for me to find a giant now because he'll die.
yeah.
And that's the part that sucks, man. Is like part of me is like, yeah, well, why can't that buck be on something that I can hunt? Because, dude, forget about it. But it's a that's the nature of the beast, I guess.
It is. And when you do run across them unicorns, them just absolutely special deer. It just makes it that much more special, even when you don't kill them. I know we're running a little long, and I apologize, but I want to tell you a story. So I bought my property. It's only a 60-acre parcel. It's a really nice piece of land. It's got a great mix of swamp. It's got roughly 10 acres of fairly open ground that's tillable or for food plots, and then it's got some decent ridges, and then it's got a creek running through it. So it's a really great mix for 60 acres, and I've had it since I bought it in 2017. And every year the first couple of years, I was like freaking scatterbrained. Like I had so many ideas, and I was trying to do everything
all at once, and you just can't do that. So then after a couple of years of just screwing myself up because I was trying to do too many things, I started putting a plan together. Like, okay, over the next 5 years, I'm going to focus on access and bedding. Then I'll focus on getting myself set up with properly placed food plots, and then I'll move, on to the next thing, so on and so forth. But 3 years ago, I was out hunting, and it was November 7th or 8th, and I had this. Now, where I hunt, if you see a 130-inch buck, that's a freaking mondo where I'm at. This buck was a 140-inch buck. 11 o'clock in the morning, he came out and started. He was tending a couple does. He was running off some younger bucks. He put on an amazing show for me. I mean, he was lip curling, he was snort wheezing, he was doing all the things you want to see. It was a cold, crisp morning. The steam's rolling. I mean, it's just like that. It's that stuff that's made for TV, right? It's like if I had a camera, it would have been phenomenal footage. And this buck wore me out for over an hour trying to get him in position. And he finally ran two lesser bucks off and got this doe isolated from the other does that were out there. And that frickin' doe ran right underneath me and stopped right under my stand. So he's standing 25 yards facing straight at me. She's right under me. And she started picking my scent up. And she starts doing the old turning her head and looking up at me. I've got my bow in my hand. I'm kind of looking at her and I'm looking at this buck, and she's starting to do the old, I can just tell she's ready to go. And that buck turned, and as soon as he turned, I was like, it's now or never, and I'm going to have to make this fast. So I ripped my bow back. He was at 12 yards. I brought my pin up, and I didn't even wait for my pin to get settled into the vitals. As soon as I hit the bottom of his body, I touched that trigger off, and all I did is literally trim the hair off his brisket. She took off running behind me. He only ran like 5 yards, but he wasn't leaving because she was behind me. And finally, she ran around and took off, and then he took off out of my life. I never saw that buck again. Thanksgiving that same year at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my neighbor shot that deer. And it hurt to see a buck like that get shot by a neighbor, but to see his face and how excited he was, and that was the biggest buck that he had shot. So yeah, it's a double edged sword. I'm super happy for him, but boy was I kicking myself for screwing that hunt up, man.
This this will make everybody feel very good about themselves and their own intelligent capacity. The biggest screw up I ever had on a buck was I, over 150, probably 160. He's up there big time, and he's chasing a doe, and there was a string of bucks behind him. And not only was he like a 160, but the buck behind him was a shooter too. And the doe comes running right up to 20 yards, and I'm like, this is it. I'm going to get a freaking chip shot, right? And another time this happened, and I waited too long, and the buck got away. But in this situation, the doe comes running right on by, and he starts coming. So I yank my bow back, and I'm settling in, and he's at 20 yards, and I'm like, he's done. Like he's getting ready to step right where I'm going to kill him. And as soon as I go, meh, and he stops, I'm like, something doesn't look right. What's wrong here? And I realized I never knocked an arrow. Yeah. And now I'm looking down my bow with no arrow, and I'm looking right at this buck, and I'm like, he looks up at me and takes off. And I'm telling you, it. I'm telling you, it was a damn good thing that my harness wasn't wrapped around my neck because I'd have jumped out of that
Jump
tree.
right out of the tree. That's brutal. That is brutal, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never had that happen, but I have sat in a tree, completely oblivious to the world, and then had a buck come in, and I reached for my bow, and I went to clip my harness or clip my release to my bow, and I never even packed it. I didn't have it in the tree with me. It's not like I forgot to put it on. I forgot to get it out of the truck. So that was a.
Yeah.
I'm telling you
And
guys.
that one, and that ended up kind of happening that way because I don't even think I was in that tree a minute, and I was still settling in, and the whole thing unfolded. And so I don't feel like that much of an a-hole because of it, but it didn't make it hurt any less, I'll tell you that.
No, no, man. I've been at it with a bow and arrow for 30. This coming season will be my 31st year, and I'm sure I'm not done making stupid mistakes. It's gonna happen again, but they definitely get less and less. I mean, my first 10, 12 years, oh my gosh, I could write a comedy on just some of the absolute stupid things I had done. But man, it's a drug, and it just keeps me coming back for more and more and more, man. So real quick, I know we want to get this wrapped up. It's been a couple hours now, but I love to do these rapid fires. So I've got three quick questions for you. Just hit me with your quick take on each of them. All right. Um, if you could only pick 3 days to hunt with archery equipment in the state of New York, which 3 days are you going to pick, and why are you going to pick those 3 days?
So I would probably go with the 4th to the 7th or the 10th to the 13th, right in there. And in the in that second week, I mean, the first week they start getting pretty stupid, but they're kind of still on that pattern. But in the second week, they're just full blown dumb. But one of my famous sayings is you can kill them on any given day with the right strategy. But the dumber they are at the moment, the more mistakes they make.
So November 4th, 7th, or November 10th, 13th?
Yeah.
Okay, right on.
Or November 7th to 10th, right in there. Really, that 7 to 14, anywhere in there.
Sure, sure. Okay. Um, what's one, not like your bow, your arrows or anything like that, or your stand setup, but what's one piece of gear you will not head into the whitetail woods without?
So other than your bow and your stand, I would have to stick. And I'm a minimalist when it comes to gear, especially taking the damn camera gear out. The pack gets heavy, but I would say the grunt call, because sometimes that thing will save you.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's I can attest to that, man. I carry a grunt tube regardless of the time of year. It's just something that's always on me, and if I've never forgot it, but I would feel naked if I did. So for me, it's always milkweed in my grunt tube. I milkweed when I'm out on public because I'm hunting my way into new spots. But yeah, it's the grunt tube for me as well. And then last question, and this is going to be my question to you because say next year I want to go hunt public land in New York. Uh, Coming from a guy with 30 years archery experience, asking a guy who lives there, what's your best piece of advice for a guy like me if I wanted to go spend, let's say, 5 days during archery season chasing around public land whitetails in upstate New York? What would be your advice for me?
For someone that's experienced, is I would say don't overthink it, and stick to what you know, and it's going to work. Don't get intimidated by it.
Okay, that's good. Probably with a caveat off of that to say, don't expect to see a deer in the first 5 days. You might want to plan for 10.
Unless you get a hold of me ahead of time,
There you
I'll
go.
drop you some pins.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Awesome, man. Well, where can people find you, follow along, watch you do your hunts, dropping hammers? Where can they find you?
So YouTube channel is Dropping Hammers Outdoors, and just kind of getting going with that. Got some good videos on there, but I promise you there's going to be some really cool stuff coming. My regular Facebook page, I put some informational videos on there, and you can just kind of see what I'm up to. My first name is Clint. My last name is Catchot, Catchot. And then I also have a Facebook page for Dropping Hammers Outdoors. So those three places, you can catch
Awesome.
me on there.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, man. If somebody wants to get a hold of you to have you work with them through maybe strategizing a property, is the best way for them to get a hold of you via like the Clint Catchot Facebook or
Yeah, I would say Messenger on there would probably be the best way for now.
awesome, man. Awesome. Well, uh, I'm definitely gonna come to New York, man. I don't know if it's gonna be this coming season, but it's on my hit list for sure. So when I make that trip, I'll let you know ahead of time, and we'll have to meet up and uh, go chase around some deer. But if you find yourself coming around the Michigan area, let me know too. I've got a handful of pins throughout the state, so we can go chase some deer around here too, man. I appreciate you coming on. I look forward to continuing talking to you. I hope you'll come back on again at some point and we can dive into some more strategy stuff. But it was great to get to know you. Give the listeners a chance to get to know you, and yeah, I'm excited to continue carrying on some dialogue with you both via podcast and just shooting messages. In fact, I in my email I sent you today, I threw my cell phone number in there, so feel free to drop me a message on there whenever, man.
Sounds good, bro. And yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. I had a great time and thank God for the opportunity. And thank you. Thanks for having me, man.
No, man, I appreciate it. Well, I hope you're staying warm up there. I watched a little bit of the New England game while I was doing my honeydew list last night, and I saw I don't know. I looked at the TV in like the second quarter and it was a green field, and then I looked in the fourth quarter and they were playing in like 6 inches of snow, man. So I know you got pounded with a lot of snow. I know some of my friends in PA got like 24 inches of snow. But yeah, stay warm, stay safe, man. We'll talk soon. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yep. Thanks, dude. Hey, have a good one.
Take care, man.
Thanks for tuning in to Wild Spirits Outdoors. We appreciate you joining us on this journey. Don't forget to like, follow, and share wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us grow the tribe and keep on chasing the wild. Stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram at Wild Spirits Outdoors, and also on YouTube at Wild Spirits Pod. You can also head over to www.wildspiritsoutdoors.com for more content. Until next time, chase the wild, feel the spirit.